everyone. Today I'd like to go over some variations using a strap involving back bends and the hips. So that being said, have a strap. You can also use a towel, a sweatshirt if you have it, just something that you're able to bind around your legs or wherever needed. So I've got my strap ready. Because we're going to be getting into the hips, we'll be doing poses like low crescent lunge, pigeon pose. I think it's really good to make sure that we're warming them up first. So I'm going to take us through a nice short little warm up. This is something that I actually like to do before I go to the gym or when I get to the gym and I'm about to approach sort of a leg day. So that being said, let's get right into it. I'm going to start with a child's pose with my knees together, just because I want to feel a stretch in my low back. I think when we're able to really warm up through the low spine, it begins to get us a deeper sense of how our pelvis is feeling, what our hips are feeling like. Like right now I can feel a lot of compression in my hips. So I'm going to allow myself to just shift from side to side, just to kind of get an idea of how much compression there is. Just seeing if this movement is able to kind of work some of that static energy out. And then I'll reach my arms forward, shifting my weight forward. I'm going to open up my knees a little wider and shift my weight back. Just doing that a few times, kind of warming up through the hip joint from flexion to extension. You can even lift your feet off the floor. Sometimes it feels good to let your pelvis drop and touch the floor. Maybe wag your legs from side to side. You'll feel this a little bit in the low back. And just again, taking that a few times, shifting your weight back and shifting the weight forward, shifting the weight back. Maybe this time bending the elbows as you shift the weight forward, so you start to feel this in the thoracic spine. You can extend the legs, maybe rock your head from side to side. Give yourself a little sense of a head roll. Bring the toes together to touch, and this time sit back with the knees open wide, giving a nice stretch to the chest. Rock your head from side to side once again. Coming up, we'll sit on our heels, and I'm going to lean back just a little bit, maybe lifting one knee and then the other, opening up to that knee joint, feeling the quadriceps start to lengthen. Then coming forward, tuck the toes. You can take your time doing this. I'm kind of sweeping through. This is my second flow of the day. So we're stretching out the arches of the feet, but you'll also find that this is going to open up through the knees, and that in turn will help with the quads. Everything's connected. Shifting forward once again. I always like to do a few cat-cows, especially because this strap work is going to involve a lot with the back, the low back. So just a few cat-cows to warm up the spine, maybe a dancing lion. This is all very intuitive, so you don't have to remember this pose by pose. I'm kind of just following what my body needs. And I get questions a lot about, how do you develop a sense of intuition with your body? And I think it's the same just with life. You just kind of have to go through it and listen, learn to listen. Let's do a few cobras. Tops of the feet are into the floor, hands are framing the chest. Exhale the breath out. As I inhale, I'm lifting up through my spine, pulling my chest back. Lifting up through my hands, making sure that all of the energy, all of the muscle work is coming from the back body. Exhale, I'm going to release, wag my hips. Walk the hands back a little more, exhale the breath out. Now as I inhale, remember that idea. Roll a marble away with the nose, so find length through the spine. Squeeze the elbows in. This time press into the heels of the hands, but just a little. Squeeze the elbows in a little more and then pull the mat backwards. Exhale, release it. Bend at the knees, windshield wiper the legs. All right. Let's press it back. Child's pose, just release anything that might have built up back there. Then coming into all fours, we're going to find a low crescent lunge. So tuck your toes, lift your hips. You're in downward facing dog. I recommend doing a few of these. So this is something that you can throw into the middle of a practice, but definitely not something you want to attempt cold. So make sure that if this is your first movement of the day, I'd spend a little more time warming up, just because these postures can be a little intense and a little too intense for a body that is not warm yet. So I'm going to go ahead and lift my left leg. I feel like circling it out and just stretching out the hip. Oh, that feels good. Remember, it's really not about how high your leg goes. It's about finding where that edge is. Those sensations of openness and stretch. Let it feel really good. And then I'm going to take that leg forward, step it between my hands, and drop my back knee. Now, I'm going to stay here for a moment. So before I'm even thinking about using a strap or finding a bind, you want to make sure that your body is ready for that. Whenever we go into postures that require a bind or use a prop or are just accentuations of the original posture, it's very, very important to recognize that those are a bonus to the practice. They're really fun to try. They give us a place to work towards, words. But they are no means any better or worth any more than just staying here. So try to remind yourself that if these postures that we're working on today are something that your body is just having none of at the moment, that's okay. And you will get there with consistency and practice and time. But we have to honor the idea that here is enough. This requires enough of you. Going further, that's an extra. And we are lucky and privileged if we get a chance to be there. I'm going to stretch out my hamstring for just a touch. And then I'm going to come forward. So we're going to come into a quad stretch. So my hand is going to stay planted into the floor. The first thing that I'm going to do is just twist my spine. So even just by taking my eye gaze up to the ceiling with a twist, I can already start to feel this hip stretch even more. Now from there, I'm just going to bend my knee. And you'll notice and feel where your edge is. And I'm going to let it come back down. You can keep the toes tucked. That'll accentuate the stretch in your hip. Just keep bending your knee, finding that flexion in the toes, noticing the stretch that occurs as we find that flexion. If you want to go further, this is where you can use your strap. So I'm going to go ahead and take my strap around my ankle. And I've got one of these that's kind of cool. It's got holes in the center and handles, so I think it's a little easier to use. But essentially, you'll come back down to this position. Now, you can flip the grip of your hand, and I recommend doing that so that the thumb is facing up. And then allow this hand to help pull this leg towards you. As I'm doing this, I'm still trying to maintain length in my spine. So if I round my body and lift my hips, I no longer feel anything here. But if I lengthen my hips down and thinking about opening my chest up, my leg doesn't have to go very far for me to feel it. I'm going to go a little further on my exhale. I'm going to do my best to breathe into the stretch. Take an inhale. Go a little further on your exhale. And then release it when you're ready. You don't need to hang out there very long in order for it to be effective. Again, those are very intense stretches, so listen to your body. Never force anything. I'm going to set myself up for the opposite side. So I'm already going to have this strap around my ankle. I'm going to come into downward facing dog first. So I lifted this leg last time, so now I'm going to lift this one. And I'm going to allow my hip to open. It should feel really, really nice on your supporting leg. And I'm going to step this leg in between my hands. Only thing I'm doing first is just allowing that back leg to drop. We're getting a sense of how the hip is feeling. You might have one side that's easier to move than the other. I think I mentioned that in my last video that our bodies are not anatomically symmetrical. They're really not perfect, as much as we'd like them to be, right? So just be mindful that you might want to take it a little easier on one side, and again, it's just a reminder that it gives us something to work for. We're always going to strive for evenness on both sides. I'm going to give my hamstring a little break here, give it a little stretch. I'm going to come forward. Again, the first thing that I'm going to do is just find a twist. And I already noticed that as I found a twist, you might have seen it, my hip popped up. So I'm going to try that again with my hips remaining down, see if I can keep them down and just have a twist there. And I can already tell that this hip is much tighter than my other one. And I'm just going to hang here. Move slow. The thing that I love about in-person classes is I feel like you're just constantly moving, but I think there's something to be said about taking the time in each posture to really feel it and understand it. You know, when we spend an hour on a full class, maybe with 3 or 4 flows in it, you're really only spending maybe seconds at a time in each posture. But if you give yourself the time to really sit and feel, I think that's when we are able to essentially deepen our practice. I'm going to give this hip a break. I'm going to come back. Now, I'm already going to be reaching for my straps. So I think that's a good tip is already have your strap in your hand if you can. Remember, we talked about the thumb up, so the shoulder is rotating out. I'm going to come back forward. You might have to heel toe that foot. I'm going to bend this leg in. And then just allow it to come back down. Using the breath. Maintaining that length in the spine. Now, if you want to even pull this arm up and over this way, sometimes that can allow the shoulders to square. You might feel this a little deeper. You won't be able to let that leg go. However, it does really stretch out the quadricep. And then you allow it to come down. Giving that front leg a break and coming back. All right, I'm gonna undo this strap. Oop, got stuck a little bit. All right, so those hips are feeling pretty good. So let's come into a pigeon here. So you can start from a downward facing dog. I'm gonna lift my left leg. I'm gonna find a pigeon pose. Now, this one in particular, you will feel in your low back. So this will be a back bend. When I was a kid, I loved back bends. I thought it was like the coolest. And after years and years and years of doing them, my back is just like will no longer have it. So I actually really avoid, I love when I can, but I usually avoid back bends in my practice, mostly because I just don't like the way that they feel, which probably means that I need to do more of them. So I'm going to try and incorporate them more into my practice. But I think what I'm trying to say is, unless I have a lot of time to devote, I usually gear my practice less towards them because I really just don't want to risk the injury. So the same rules apply here, but however, I want everybody to kind of remember this. If your leg is not able to be completely square to the floor, then this is not a variation that you want to go into just yet. Maintaining this sense of squareness is super, super important. If it is open, you run the risk of injuring your low back. So we're going to do our best to keep our pelvis neutral. Now, I like to go in with my opposite hand here. So reaching up and over and seeing if I can get my heel towards my glute. I find that that really opens up my left hip. If you want to go for the bind on this side, coming into sort of a mermaid pose, you might find that both of your hips are off the floor. That's okay. This might be enough. This is where you could use your strap. If you want to go a little further, eventually the goal here is trying to get the toes into the elbow, but still keep the shoulders forward. So I'm not yet to that point, or I'm not warmed up enough for it yet. So I'm going to use my strap. And what I'm really focused on with the strap is that my shoulders are able to be maintaining this sense of squareness to the front versus if they were off towards the diagonal of the room. I'm using this left hand behind me to encourage my elbow pointing directly up. And from there, you can bring your foot closer to you or also let your head fall back. So this is a really great stretch for the hip, but definitely for the upper body as well. I'm gonna go ahead and let that go. Whew. Have a seat. Oh my goodness, your left leg might be on fire right now. Mine sure is. Oh, goodness. We always feel the benefits of it afterwards, right? All right, let's take it to the other side. I'm gonna skip that downward facing dog and I'm just gonna go right into it. This is usually my more flexible side, excuse me. So you're in your pigeon pose. Oof. These hips today. I'm focused on trying to keep my chest square. I'm letting this hip open. Again, opposite hand to foot is going to encourage a deeper stretch in the glute. And that's going to help to square off the hips towards the floor. You will still feel this in your quadricep. Now, if we're coming up for this for sort of this mermaid stretch, your shoulders can be square to the side. The goal eventually being that we can get them to face the front. So just staying here a moment, finding that stretch in the quad, oof, right through the psoas. And then using the strap, finding that bind when we're ready. Again, I'm using my opposite arm towards the camera to help square and pull my left shoulder forward. You can let the head fall back. Maybe both hands up. Trying to bring that leg closer to you. This is encouraging openness in the front side of the body. And if we can't find that grab with our hands to the feet yet, this is bringing us closer to it. So it's worth it to at least try. And again, you can let that strap go as long as you need it to. I'm gonna release it. Oh my goodness. And let my legs windshield wiper. My gosh. She's not 18 years old anymore, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna let my legs come forward. I'm just gonna let a stretch for my low back, so allowing my shoulders to round. If you've made it this far, you deserve a Shavasana, so please take one. Take care. Take care of your bodies. Say thank you. Say I love you. From my heart to yours. A namaste and have a beautiful day.